live. We should be live. There you go. We're live. We'll all have to accept that we're live on this new button we have to press. Yes. So I'm going to mute the microphones as well. Welcome to everybody that's joined. Please write down and save your lovely questions and contributions, because it's really all about what you have to say to the group. It is a group effort. And if anyone's watching this, not sure what the JLSM is, we are a mastermind group. That means that we are there to share ideas and support each other in our endeavors. Some of those are personal endeavors, some of them are business endeavors, and there are a mixture of different opportunities being discussed. But the gist of it is we're all trying to help each other to keep on track and get forward, much like being a personal trainer for everybody else in the group. So everyone here is trying to support everybody else and hope they can keep going to their dream objective. That's what it's all about. So welcome again, those just dialing in. A bit of housekeeping as we start. So this is the general session for the John Lavenia Success Mastermind, 15th of June, 2021. We do have another session later from the great Ivier, who is on this call. So we're looking forward to seeing Ivier later with Corporate Curios. That's 5 p.m. Eastern Time US and 10 p.m. UK time. For those of you that are around, those are great sessions where Ivier will share her ideas on issues that arise in a corporate and business context in terms of interactions with people, difficult situations, solutions. Always very interesting and thought-provoking. So join Ivier if you can tonight. Today, right now, we're on the general session where we share our general thoughts on in the context of this mastermind group. I started off myself thinking about this with a few home truths, and I pulled out a little book that I love to carry around. In that book, and the title of the book is "It's Not How Good You Are, It's How Good You Want to Be." That's Paul Arden. Somebody might want to post the link to that if they get the chance to Amazon, but it's not how good you are, it's how good you want to be. And that is absolutely what this is all about. A lot of people probably came into this group or got online and they've been focused on the past at that point, thinking, well, what haven't I done? Why didn't I do it? Beating ourselves up. Why didn't I do this earlier? I don't understand the e-commerce. I've got to do something about it. But we've been looking originally largely backwards. But this book is a great inspiration, and I hope every day we get great inspirations from members of the JLSM on looking forward, because we should be looking at how good we want to be. That was the first home truth for me that started me thinking today. But of course, we are not going to get there unless we stick to the dream, to the big goal that we've set ourselves, that we're very clear on it and that we stick to it. And that is the topic for today's discussion. And I'm going to title this "Stay in Your Lane." Stay in your lane. Once you've chosen your direction, stay in your lane and get there. So for today's thought, really, I might do another talk. What the heck is my lane anyway? But that's another story. Once you've actually alighted on what it is you want to do, and we've spent hours in this group studying books and talking about that problem, which is still a burning one for a lot of us, we've got to stay in the lane because we really want to get there. We've gone to all this time and trouble to think about what we'd really love to do. What is it that would make you feel so great if you had it right now, that you'd actually achieved it, that you'd think you'd won the lottery, gone to the moon, got everything you'd ever dreamed of? Once you know that, stay in your lane. But that is harder than it sounds. And I wanted to focus a bit on what can go wrong today and what we can spot and what we can try and do about it. Mencius said, only when a person will not do some things, is he or she capable of doing great things. Absolutely agree with that. And I've talked about having a not to-do list as well as a to-do list once before. It's not good enough to say, there's my big goal, this is what I want, here's my to-do list. You've got to have a not to-do list, because actually, surprisingly, it's what's on the not to-do list that probably causes the most damage, because we tend to get defocused and drawn off onto things that are not helping us get to this goal. Now, they already knew this in the 3rd century BC, so we should take note of that. This is not a new phenomenon. People have been trying to strive to achieve great things for centuries, for millennia. And Mencius said, even then in the 3rd century BC, It's the things you're not going to do that will assist you to do great things. So we've really got to be able to say no, not to change lane, to stay in our lane, not to change lane or direction for anything or anybody. But that takes a massive, massive awareness and discipline. And it's something we have to work on every single day. We have to know in advance that we're going to say no and what we're going to turn down. This is a massive problem personally that I grapple with all the time. You will get people approaching you and saying great things and offering you opportunities all the time. And the more you do what you're doing right now and studying what you're studying right now in this group, I guarantee you the more that's going to happen. So this is where this discipline comes back to the fore. I mean, let's just imagine a real journey for a minute, get to a destination. We get in the car, or whatever it is we're driving. We set the GPS. We've all got GPS now. We didn't have that originally. We've now got a GPS. The satellite locks on, it finds out where we are. And we've discussed this before. We sit there, the GPS tells us what to do. We program it in. But then we decide we're going to go off on a bit of a sidetrack. We just think, oh, I know better. I'll go down a side route, or I'll stop at this town. I'd like to have a look at it, which is fine. The trouble is doing that in our chosen journey in this group. We may never arrive at where we were intending to go. And I've found that on so many occasions. We take these side trips, we somehow never really get back on track. I'm traveling. I'm feeling great about traveling, but I'm getting no closer to that destination that I selected in my GPS. It may have been a fun, stimulating time, great journey, visiting many exciting mental towns, as I'll call them, but I still haven't got to the destination. And that's what life is like. That's what happens. Now, the difference with the GPS, of course, is that we make all these lane changes, impromptu visits to small villages on the way, and the GPS keeps telling us how to get back on course. You better turn right. And then it remaps. You've seen it. It says, I'm going to recalculate the route. Does it all for you in order to get to exactly where you originally told the GPS you were going to go. It's looking over your shoulder like a personal trainer saying, hey, hang on, you're off track. This is how you get back on track. This is your destination. The trouble is, as we know in life, we're the ones that have to work out those direction changes and replot the map. And if we're not very conscious of what we're doing, we don't even realize we're off track, and we don't have a clear plan as to how to get back on track. So every time we change lane, as I'll call it, change direction, we're threatening our whole initiative. No one's going to tell you. There's no GPS speaking incessantly at you saying, hey, turn right to get back on track. I've remapped the course. Here's the new route. We have to do it. Nobody's going to tell us that. Well, John does tell us that, to be fair. Thank you, John. He keeps telling us to get back on track and reminding us. He certainly does that. So without this GPS, we've got a problem, because if we change lane, we've got to keep assessing and being aware of the fact we have changed lane in the first place, what impact that's having on our goal. And then we've got to replot the course, because otherwise we'll never get back on course, and we may never get to where we said we wanted to go. And how many times have any of you found that? I have certainly found that on so many occasions, I can't even count them, that I suddenly realize a little while later, or maybe a long time later, I've just spent all that time on something I didn't intend to do because somebody asked me to, or whatever the case may be. Well, there are a number of ways we can change lane or change direction for the wrong reasons. And just looking at a couple of those, we can actually consciously do it. Well, let's hope we've consciously got it right, but we don't always consciously get it right. Some of the decisions we made yesterday may not be great ones today, and we have to be ready to assess the conscious changes we've made and decide whether they were the right ones. We can't just run with something because we decided to do it without looking at it again. We have to constantly reassess. Most often we get pushed out of our lane by external forces, not of our choice. Either way, it really doesn't matter. We still lose direction. We still lose focus. It still dilutes our efforts. So however that change occurred, if it was consciously, mistakenly, unconsciously, imperceptibly, it still has the same impact. How it happened doesn't matter. Chopping and changing doesn't help. We have to hold a course long enough to have an impact on getting towards our goal. So some examples of what can go wrong. Well, one is certainly not staying true to or being authentic to our original idea. And that can happen because we start adding too many bells and whistles into the mix. too many ideas come to our attention while we're exploring this goal and this idea, unconsciously being pushed off the idea, maybe just style drift. We just start losing the original focus and clarity we had on our idea, and the style drifts imperceptibly for the wrong reasons, and we can end up miles away from where we thought our idea sat and how it worked and why it worked and who was going to come to us for it. So maybe lack of clarity of vision we've ended up with. Maybe we've just got a lack of discipline. Perhaps we've lost belief in ourselves and our original idea. That does happen. Maybe we're starting to challenge unconsciously our idea and drifting off it, and before we know it, we've diluted the whole thing. It's sticking at it long enough and not losing faith sometimes. Also, these changes not being authentic to our idea can happen because we listen too much to what other people are saying, to other people's views. Everyone is going to have something to say about your idea. You've already seen it. I'm sure you've all seen it. They're all going to have a view. They're all going to have an opinion. They're always right. You're always wrong. You're crazy. They don't know why you're doing it. It's so easy to get pushed out of your lane or off direction by that. A second thing that can happen quite often, certainly, is paralysis. We just got too many solutions and too many ideas in front of us. We end up with something we wrote down that was simple and straightforward. And then we see lots of other things come to our attention, and suddenly we've got a whole bunch of ideas and we just get paralyzed. We've got too many pieces of advice from too many people and we're trying to implement them all at once. And then what happens? Paralysis. We do nothing, or we just get stuck. We just get completely stuck. Or we just spoil the dish because there are too many cooks, too many ingredients, too many people in the kitchen. We're taking too many people into our core and nothing then gets done. Everyone's debating what to do and there's no clarity anymore. And that has the same detrimental effects as a positive lane change. All of that getting pushed off by external forces is just as bad. Another one that certainly I've seen often is it can't be done. Third problem, it can't be done. Let's just give up. We'll find a new idea. We just don't like this idea anymore. Well, that is the 3 feet from gold scenario in Think and Grow Rich, which Ali mentioned again recently. You don't quite hit the seam of gold. You give up just before you get there. And at that point, you haven't given it your full, all, your real go. Who knows what might have happened if you kept going a bit longer. Japanese proverb, the Japanese say, fall 7 times and stand up 8, which I love. You have to be prepared to really throw yourself in, but we do tend to give up. We get disheartened, or it doesn't work, it's too complicated, so easy to give up. So in this scenario, we just keep going from one thing to the next perpetually because we discard the idea, we give up before we hit the vein of gold instead of seeing it through, and then we go on to the next one and the next one and so on. But the trouble is, seeing it through can require absolutely everything we've got, our all, our full effort, trying everything. Digging out the last 3 feet of that rock in front of the gold is not easy. Nelson Mandela said, it always seems impossible until it is done. And that's certainly how it feels. Churchill said, success is not final. Failure is not fatal. It is the courage to continue that counts. These are all great people in the past that are telling us this is what they went through. They didn't have an easy time. Their road was certainly not predictable, straight and easy, but they stuck in their lane, they stuck in their direction, they got the job done. They did it, but that is not easy. Another thing that can go wrong, another thing that can push us out of our direction or lane is just picking the wrong lane in the first place. Now that's not so obvious, but it's got exactly the same effect, detrimental effect on reaching goals as changing lane when you started with a clear idea. If we start off in the wrong lane, inevitably at some point, we're not going to feel aligned with our goal. We're going to realize it was wrong. And when we discover that error, we're going to change direction. And all the effort we've put into this original direction is potentially or largely going to be wasted. So in that scenario, we're still on the journey that just isn't going to get to the destination we should be going to. So either way, we just don't get there. We don't get where we're all aiming to be. And on this scenario, at least don't be afraid to change lane. If you realize you've gone down the wrong track, yes, it's bad news, but you can change track. And all experience I've found is good experience, but don't be afraid We have to change if we suddenly realize we got it wrong. But just be aware when you make your original choice of goal of the consequences of the waste and the diffusion of choosing the wrong goal. So really throw a lot of effort into choosing those goals and initial directions very, very carefully. And I saw a very interesting indicator from someone that we might be in the right lane, the wrong lane rather, we might be in the wrong lane. Steve Maraboli said, if the things behind you are tripping you, you're moving in the wrong direction. Well, that is fascinating. I'd like to have some thoughts on that from the philosophers in the group later and the thinkers. But if the things behind you are tripping you, you're moving in the wrong direction. How about that as an indicator that you might be in the wrong lane to pull yourself up and test whether you're going the right way? Anyway, those are some examples of how we tend to change lane. What can we actually do about all this? What can we consider doing? Well, certainly I've become aware now much more that we have to keep reassessing the lane we're actually in and what we're doing in it, what it is and what it looks like, and then staying in it, making a conscious effort to stay in it. That is not easy. Journey is a journey. Whether it's a mental journey or a physical journey, it's a journey, and it's all about good navigation. Without good and conscious navigation, we're not likely to reach our destination. We all know this from physical journeys. If we just don't follow the map, don't look at the compass, don't really pay attention to where we're going, how likely is it we're going to successfully arrive? Unless we know the journey so well that we do it automatically. Well, that just isn't the case. We're going on a new journey here to new destinations none of us have been. So we need to keep a close eye and consciously navigate. It makes perfect sense to me when I think about it, but how often is it that I don't do it? Quite often. If we were flying or sailing, we're always checking our heading, we're checking our compass bearing. Mark will tell you in the aviation world. But there's something very important I think we've all got to remember. And that is, we talk about compasses, but the compass only shows the direction we've decided to go in. It shows us where to go once we've decided. We decide the direction, not the compass. The compass points out where it is once we've decided on it. We have to set the course. We set the journey, not the compass. And that's a mistake we can easily make. It's still, we're in control. We're in control. Secondly, it struck me, of course, we've got to check that our road, our lane, our direction actually goes somewhere. Does it go anywhere at all? Well, the obvious can be the hardest thing to see sometimes. Maybe we didn't check properly the track of the journey, do a critical timeline that Emma was mentioning the other day, work out what was involved in our journey, what we needed. Maybe we didn't spend enough time on that. Some of you might be aware of the Greek myth, the myth of Sisyphus. Sisyphus was punished by Zeus, and he was condemned to roll a boulder up a hill for eternity. The problem was that as soon as the boulder got to the top of the hill, it rolled back down again and he started again for eternity. Well, there you go. That's an example. Check your map. Does your path go where you think it's going? Is it joined up to the end of your journey? And will it actually get to the goal you've set? Have you carefully enough considered what the steps are for your particular journey for these goals? Or are you just rolling a rolling stone? So that was a great image in my head that I certainly always remember. I can see poor Sisyphus pushing his rock up that hill. Again, stick to your origins, really. That's another thing that's important. I try to keep testing what were the origins of the idea. Where did I start from? What made me and what made us take that leap to be here today in this group? Is it still the same thing? Is the idea still the same thing? Have we made clear lane changes and are we sticking to the new lane? Did we do it decisively and properly and in good consideration? If not, we can fix that. But at least we've got to be aware where we started. What was the origin of this whole process? And am I still running the same idea and the same journey? Where am I? We've got to keep checking that. We have to consciously turn the wheel to change direction, not let the wheel just spin without our hands on it. So we can fix these journeys, but we've got to be clear that we're still running the journey we intended and look back to the origin and say, I know why I'm doing this. I haven't lost track of it. Life is a very large vehicle, but small turns of the wheel in your hands can change the direction of that very large vehicle significantly. That's it. Another thing is, what is your idea? Keep checking that. What did you think people would come to you for when you sat down and designed these goals that you have? And what made you think enough people would make enough business for you to make that idea work? So keep that in focus. Make sure that's in your check process, and that we know where we started and why these people were going to come to us, and that we haven't gone away from that. Because if we dilute that, we're going to do all this work and then not enough people are going to come. That's the danger. Thirdly, really, on sticking to our origins and our journey, where is our edge? What did we think it was? Are we very clear on what our personal edge is? What are we supreme at? What are we really great at? Or are we just wandering across the lane markers on the road, wandering between lanes, not really quite sure what our real edge is, and trying to be too many things to too many people, having parallel journeys which are just diffusing our efforts? Are we still on track? Has someone pushed us off course? Has that actually happened from the examples I gave earlier? We can always track back and see when that happened. If we're conscious and we keep reassessing whether we're still on track, when we realize we're not, we can find out when that happened. Who did it? What idea did it? And then we can act on it very consciously, and we can get back on the track. But it does take awareness to do that. It does take awareness. Second sort of area of assessment for me was, am I clear on my marketplace? Are we all clear on the actual marketplace, core market that we're trying to serve? Has that work been done? Have we gone through those stages? Again, which market are we going to be supreme and unbeatable in? Are we very clear on that? Where are we going to do a cutting edge, great job? And are we evolving that core market we've identified, but at the same time, staying within the lane, not evolution that's diffusing and diluting our idea, but improving our idea? Is that where we are right now, or has something gone wrong in the planning? So many ways we can get pushed out of shape in what was our core offering and end up with a shapeless object. I mean, they always say that a camel is a horse designed by a committee. So let's remember that. Let's remember that. Things can just go wrong along the way, and this horse doesn't quite come out the way we originally drew it. But there are so many opportunities we all know that will be thrown at us. They're not all going to serve us, though. They will not all serve our mission. They might serve something else. They might be perfectly valid. They might be great things to do, but they may not serve this particular mission and get us to this particular goal. Probably the greatest problem I personally have faced in the last 30 years. Opportunities get thrown at you like confetti sometimes, like London buses. They all come along at once, and then we're stuck saying, oh, what do I do? What do I do? And sometimes we can just fall into them and work on someone else's idea, and then realize quite a long time later that's what we've done. So let's not go there. Let's be conscious enough to test that. But above all, we've got to be definite. We've got to be decisive in our chosen direction. What struck me as an illustration of that is, do we want to be like poet William Wordsworth, who wandered lonely as a cloud that floats on high? Or do we want to be like John Lavenia? I'm not sure if he's on, but I'm going to use his name in vain. Do we want to be like John Lavenia, imperfect and done, but done? Relentless progress towards a decisive goal, done, having a go, doing something? Or are we going to wander aimlessly trying to look for perfection and just enjoying the journey, but with no focus? Because, okay, that's fine, but we accept at that point that we are unlikely to reach the goal that we've set, or we're unlikely to do it in a hurry until we make some changes. So what's the conclusion to all this? Well, we're not going to get there, in my view, and we all know this, I think, unless we stick to our big chosen goal. We stick to the track and the lane that actually takes us there. We identify what it is and we stay in it. That was my thought for tonight. So really, stay in the lane, maybe change gear in that lane, but don't change lane. Up the effort, change gear, get the motor running well, but let's not get out of our lane. Paul Arden, again, going back to the book I mentioned at the outset of the discussion today, he says, look, your vision of where or who you want to be is the greatest asset you have. Without having a goal, it is difficult to score. Here again. Great summary, great summary. Your vision, it's your vision of where you want to be or who you want to be. That is your greatest asset. So let's be clear on it and get it to help us stay in that lane and keep direction towards where we're going. He also said, don't look for the next opportunity. The one you have in your hand is the opportunity. Do the best you can with this opportunity before moving on to the next one. Well, how many times have I fallen foul of that? I'm not even going to admit to that. I think I can't bear it. It's too painful. But we've probably all been there as well. We've probably already been there as well. Anyway, I wanted to open up the floor at this point. I'd love to hear some of your thoughts on all of those ideas. So pile in. Let's have some hands. Ali is first up. Great to see you, Ali, and great to have a talk to you earlier. And great to see some action on your idea. You're on Facebook, and I think, are you doing some Instagram as well?
Yes. So yes, getting there finally. But I think this is just absolutely brilliant, Adrian. Thank you for doing this topic. And I think for me, I don't know whether everyone else has found this, but by doing this online stuff, I have been bombarded by opportunity after opportunity. And I have fallen foul of thinking, oh yes, this looks good, or this is perhaps more up my street, or this is going to help with Amazon. And I think actually a lot of the things would help with Amazon, but it has just completely mangled my brain as to what I should be doing. And so I've stopped looking at emails, and it's just incredible the difference it makes. It's shutting out that noise that you just continually see every day when you're just looking at emails of people trying to grab your attention or trying to take you to the next opportunity, or trying to lead you away from where your focus should be. So that's been a massive thing for me, is to stop, and also to shut out that noise, and also make those decisions. I think it's hard sometimes when you don't know exactly, so you do have to try a few things to feel where your heart is, but great to focus on those things and not do the next thing until you have done your all in the first thing, I think.
Ali, I love that, and it makes me think again of the journey and the car. A lot of noise comes out of the car radio, and certainly a few times I've got fixed onto what the car radio is saying, and then I make the wrong turning, or I don't make the turning I should have made. So it all sort of fits together, doesn't it? We get bombarded now, and we're all getting bombarded. There are so many courses, there are so many ideas, there are so many products, so many platforms. You've got to stick to your knitting and commit at some point and say, that is me. I can always change it later, but I've got to see something right the way through on this platform, get it to work, and then let's see what happens next. But that is a great danger with the internet, particularly. It's a great tool, great opportunity, but there are so many things now that we can get our hands on. It's actually quite dangerous. And as you were saying, it mangles your head, mangles your brain, and it's actually probably harder than it's ever been to stay on track, I think.
It is. It's an age of too much information, really, isn't there? There's too much out there.
Yeah.
Which is why, in one thing, it's amazing and just an incredible thing to have so much knowledge on our hands. But on another thing, I think it can be too much for our brains to cope with sometimes.
Absolutely right, Ali. And it's having that ability to fix on the piece of information that are going to help us on that journey with that idea, and just say, look, the other stuff, that's fascinating, but I'm not going there. I'm not going there. It just, quite apart from anything else, it burns a hole in that tight schedule we've set ourselves, because we can't all work on our business full time online. So we've got precious time. We can't give it away to something that really is actually irrelevant when we really look at it. But that's a heck of a challenge. I know. That's great, Ali. Thank you very much. Nicola has a hand up.
Hello.
Hi.
Really good timing, as always. I've actually just come off a call with a business coach I've just took on. So it's had me kind of thinking of, most of you probably heard me talk last week about my decision to close one of my businesses, Nature and Nature, which I started last year. So similar to Ali, I think we all took on quite a lot last year and tested and tried different things. And I genuinely set it up with like long-term intention, but I just got to a point where I realized if I was going to do something well, something was going to have to give. So I've got the property business, had Nature and Nature, and then I was pursuing a kind of route down hypnotherapy and coaching, which I loved as well. So I made the decision last week to kind of change lanes a bit and close Nature and Nature. And I thought, actually, I've learned so much from it last year that now is the time to just make sure I capture those learnings and do things differently with the new hypnotherapy business. And I had just made, as you were talking there, I just made a few notes, and I think there's 4 key things that sprung to mind, which you've touched on, and Ali's touched on some of them as well. And it just shows that we're all kind of going through the same kind of thoughts in our minds at this point. And number 1 on the list was, well, actually, no, it was number 2, but number 1 was know your audience. And I think last year when I set up Nature and Nature, I had a vague idea, but I didn't really understand the whole extent of like niching down to your real specific audience and then tailoring all of your marketing materials and the channels, like tailoring it specifically for them. So I've learned so much last year that I'm taking time out with a business coach to make sure I get that really, really clear up front, rather than drift down a few different paths and realize I'm trying to attract the wrong person and the messaging is just not hitting. So that was a big thing I'll do differently. The other one, which you touched on as well, is, and this has probably been the biggest one for me, is make sure that what you're doing and when you're setting your goals, they really, really are truly aligned to your own purpose and values. And I thought the Nature and Nature business was, and some elements of it were, but now that I look back, I realize there was lots that wasn't. And one of my big things is to be kind of have time freedom, but location freedom. So now that I think about it, me sitting at home, hand making products in my kitchen is not really location freedom. You've always got to be tied to a specific location. So it just wasn't fitting with what my kind of end goal was from a lifestyle perspective. So there's a few other examples in there, but that's kind of just one where I think whatever business you're building, you have to be really clear that it's ticking all of your value boxes and it's going to help to get you where you want to get to from a kind of wider lifestyle perspective. And you're not looking at it just through kind of blinkered eyes. I mean, it's fine if it is literally about making money, then that's fine as long as you're clear about that up front. But mine was probably a bigger life change I wanted. So those 2 are probably the main ones. The other one Ali's touched on, which is just the vastness of all the information out there. And it definitely, I think I spend so much time comparing myself to other people doing similar things on social media and thinking, well, I should be doing that, and maybe I need to try that, and I should be doing more of this. And it just bogs you down with it because there's just far too much information out there. So this time around, I'm doing it differently and I'm getting really clear up front what I want to create. And yes, I'll do a bit of market research, but then, like you say, stay in your lane and do not get distracted by what other people are doing, because you just waste so much time and energy trying to follow them and it's not authentic to you. And the last one is similar again to Ali's point, is just there's so much education and training and freebies and courses out there now that I think I fell into the trap last year. Not a trap, I mean, you do need to learn, I definitely advocate that, but I never left myself enough time to implement it. And I was just on this, I felt as if I needed to constantly learn and absorb more information. And I think there's so much I learned, but I've probably not done like a huge amount with it because I never gave myself the time. So I'm doing that really differently this time as well. And just basically stripping it all right back. So I am crystal clear what I want to achieve, know what help and support I need, and then just stick to it. but I can honestly say it feels quite liberating to get to that point. I mean, don't get us wrong, I'm sure I'll kind of freak out at some point later down the line, but right now I feel like I've got a clear path. I know what support I need, and I know it's going to help create the lifestyle I want to create. So sorry, I know I've kind of rambled on a bit there, but it's just really timely because I've just had a first session with a business coach earlier. So if any of that's of any use to anyone, it just shows that there's no such thing as failure. I might have closed a business, but I've learned so much that I know I can now do to help me implement things differently this time around.
No, that's a huge help, Nicola. Do things differently, but let's give ourselves a chance. I don't know how we all feel about that. If we've got too much on, let's just do something and do it really well. Give ourselves a chance. Just unload some of it, cut it back, get something going, finish it completely, get to the goal, get through the 3 feet of rock, but get it going and decide what has to go. Absolutely great. Know your audience, you mentioned. Making sure you're aligned with your goals. Absolutely what I was saying, because do you love it? Do you really love it? All the house clearing people and clutter people say, hold the object and say, do I love this? Do I really love it? Do you really love your business? Do you love what you're doing? A bits of it just not right. Nicola got rid of a bit of it because it just wasn't right. It wasn't actually aligned with her actual goals, and she realized that. So now she's in the right lane. This is great. And then too much info and getting bogged down. Yeah, a couple of people now have mentioned that. And then staying in our lane, education, training, and actually not taking on so much we can't even implement it because we just don't have the time. So just do something, but allow time to actually implement it, see it through to the 3 foot of gold vein, end again, and do it. I love it. I love it, Nicola. That was a great, great summary of some points confronting many, many people. Thank you. Thank you. And Emma has a hand up.
Yes, I'm kind of similar to Nicola and Alison in the sense of, I think it's all come to a bit of a head. It's kind of the middle of the year. We're about to start Q3, and I know I've kind of had to reassess things and kind of working from the bottom up again. So exactly like was mentioned before, I think it was one of your suggestions before, Adrian, was, turn off all notifications. I mean, the amount of stuff you're bombarded with is just ridiculous. And it's funny now because even I have a go at my husband going, you're just bombarded by so much stuff. I'm just so pleased. I feel liberated that I've stopped all that trash coming into on my phone and also on my computer. And it's definitely making me focus better. The areas that I think I need to reassess, and I know we spoke about this and you spoke about it on Tuesday, is from a financial perspective, is really getting to grips of that whole financial part of your business. And that is definitely going to be a big focus for me. And what really resonated is what also Nicola said is, really know your audience and what are you going after, and be really clear about what you're going after for the future. So it's almost you start, and like John said, you're better to start and get on with it than not to do anything at all. But almost now I feel I've done that for a certain amount of months. I've now got kind of I kind of understand how the business is going, but it's almost like reevaluating it now. And then what is the next step? How do you scale up? How do you move things forward? And what things do go by the wayside and what do you really focus on? And that's what I'm going to do in the next couple of weeks. And it might take time and it might make other things kind of fall away a little bit. But for me, I just feel like I really need to reassess, and that's crucial. So whether it's kind of we're all at that stage, I don't know. It sounds like it, because we have all been on so many courses and so many journeys, and even this group, that it's just making sure that you keep the eyes on the prize and kind of what is that pathway that. And John was mentioning it yesterday, wasn't it? What's the tree, then what's the building behind it? It's kind of what is that path? And once you've got that set up, I just think I know when I had it before, all of a sudden I felt like I had that flow because I knew what I was doing. I know where I was heading. I feel a little bit in the water at the minute, and I kind of just need to have that focus again. So perfect timing. Thank you, Adrian.
Thanks, Emma. That was a great summary. Again, turning off the notifications. Yeah, I think the tools being thrown at us, courses, what do we actually need? What do we actually need to get it done? Not, there are a lot of other things. What do we need? That's really, for me, a bit of a top-down assessment. You start with the end in mind. What is it I need to get to this end? And then work down from this. And I need this, 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 and this. I'm not going to worry about anything else for the moment. There's a lot of nice to haves, gadgets, bits of software. They're not actually going to help me. I don't need them to get to my goal. So yeah, this noise again has come up again, interestingly, and it can end up costing us all that time we're going to put into our business. We just don't spend the time we should spend. I agree with that. Finance is getting to grips with that. Yeah, we've talked about that many times. Your audience, yeah, that's the biggest lesson I think I've probably learned in the last while, is it's the audience that we're addressing, not my own personal taste here. Now, you don't want to bend yourself out of shape. You've got to be aligned with your goal and your business and your idea, but it's not you you're selling to. So you have got to make some compromises. And if somebody tells you they're all looking for green and purple on the website, you have to go with it. You can't say, hey, I don't like green and purple. You have to have an open mind. And that's something I've really learned. The audience is critical. You understand them. You get expert advice on what those people like to see. And you got to trust them. You got to trust your advisors and go with it and give it a go. Because if we do it our way and we never change and we see it through our lens, we may never get to that audience properly. That's very, very important. And the flow, absolutely, Emma, the flow is super critical. Once we're in it, it's lovely. It feels great. Getting back in the flow, not always easy. So I absolutely agree with that. Thanks, Emma.
I was just going to add to that as well, which I thought was quite interesting last week. Even though I shouldn't have been distracted, but I was distracted. But I did find this guy quite engaging, was he was saying about almost with your business is to also think of it, you know, as a company and all the different areas. So like finance, marketing, sales, you know, all the different parts to it. And then what are those roles within that part? And then like on an organizational chart, especially when you're doing it yourself, it's almost like we have to put everybody in every box, don't you? But what I thought was quite fascinating was he then said, start to ring the things that you really hate to do or just you're not passionate about. And those should be the ones that you start to outsource the first. And or you've just not got the expertise in. And I just thought it was such a good piece of advice because it is so true, isn't it? You would do that if you were part of an organization. You'd say, well, yeah, these are the people at the top. This is what everybody's doing in their roles. But when you're doing it yourself, you know, to try and do everything, and especially as, you know, you want to get bigger and you want to move forward, it is like, who are going to do those roles and what do I love doing? Back to what Nicola was saying, you know, I'm doing the stuff I want to do and what I love, but what is the stuff I don't want to do? And actually, who am I going to get somebody to help me with? And probably, yeah, give you advice and you can take that part off your plate and give it to somebody else with a name next to it. That's my goal. So I just thought it was good advice.
That's great, Emma. No, listen, it's absolutely, definitely the case that you cannot get beyond a certain point without good delegation. You will stay at the scale or more or less the scale you start with a nice growth, but you're not really going to get there until you let go of a few things. And certainly when you look at the big wins of the big entrepreneurs, of course, they had to let go fairly early. The ones that don't tend to kill the business eventually. You've got to know when to hand things over, have a succession, have other people growing certain functions for you. Otherwise, you're going to stay the way you are with just a bit more volume and a bit more money. Well, you've got to test that against your goal and say, hang on a minute, if I don't delegate, am I going to reach the goal that's on this piece of paper? Delegation it's the golden thread. It's so important. We've talked about it many, many times. So I couldn't agree more, Emma, couldn't agree more. Yeah, I've funnily enough had a diagram just like the one you described on my desk quite often on my desk for the last 20, 30 years. I've always shown the factory, the office block as a symbol to say, yeah, that bit has to be running, the making, the designing has to be running, the marketing end has to be running. So I keep looking at various businesses I have to advise from that perspective, saying, are each of those compartments working? Because if any one of them is not working properly, it can mess up the whole operation. So yeah, interesting, Emma. Thank you for all those contributions. And we're now going to hear Edward's wisdom on these things. I always like to hear from Edward. Hi, Edward.
Hello, sir. How are you?
Very well. Great to see you.
Good to see you too. Well, a couple of things that come up for me when we talk about this subject of staying in your lane. There's a lot of things you don't want to do, and a lot of things that you know you have to do. So I saw two different systems of doing things, getting things done that have worked for me. Number one, the 5-25 rule, which says write out your top 25 things you want to get done. And then the most important ones, put it in the top 5. And then block off everything but the top 5 and do those. Forget about the other 20. And then start, redoing them so that you won't have, it'll always be a fresh top 5. That's one way of doing it. Then another way of doing it was the Tom Hopkins way. It's called the Big 6, where you write down the Big 6 every day, and that'll help you to get where you want to be. Because it's very, very important to look at the things that are the most important and do it. And then also, I want to share with everybody what this whole scenario is doing for me. I want to tell you, it's so timely. I don't know if anybody else is experiencing this, but the subjects that are being talked about, they're so timely as far as what's going on in your life and how it affects your life. Hearing what John was talking about yesterday was really just so just piercing. And now in my scenario, in my business, it's all clicking. And I found my why. I found so many different things that now you can't tell me nothing. I'm getting it, I'm getting it. And the reason I'm getting it is because I realize who I am and what I've been, hiding and not doing forever. So the responsibility, the self-responsibility that we have is all on us. And we can look and see and wonder, but it's all us. We got to do it. And we got to stand up and say, you know what? I take self-responsibility. I take full responsibility. It's all my fault. Whatever's wrong, I'm going to make it right. And I'm going to change my vibration. I'm going to change, what I'm attracting. I'm going to change what I'm saying. I'm going to change who I am, because you can't be, anybody else except who you are. So I'm just so grateful, for you guys, and, you implementing my life and affecting what it is that, where I'm going and what I'm doing. Business is going great. Detachment has been the greatest relief in the world, because you don't care what these people talk about. Just like John was talking about yesterday, bozos on the bus. I love that phrase, because there's so many bozos out there. And that's what all those notifications, all those distractions, they're all bozos. Don't worry about them. They're not going to get you where you want to be. So anyway, I just, I was full. I had to say that, and I apologize for taking up too much time. Thank you.
No, you haven't taken up too much time. That's so recharging and inspiring to hear you talk like that. And I got to say, Carly mentioned in the chat a huge mental shift that's taken place. And I think you're certainly one of those people, Edward. When I first saw you coming on the first call to the way you're speaking now, you've made a huge reposition and mental shift, which is brilliant to see. Absolutely lovely to see that. So I'm glad it's paying off for you. And, we can all go there. All of us can do this. Every single person on this call and in this group can do this. But it's that conscious focus and staying on track and not getting pushed off for anybody. So block out your time in your week, set down your goals and stay on them and say, that's for me. This is for me. And I've got to do this for me. Otherwise, you'll have an unfulfilled life. That's the risk, where you regret later on that you didn't do it now when you could have done it. So thanks, Edward. I think that's very inspiring. And I was so pleased to hear from Carleen as well and see her in the chat. We haven't heard Carleen speak for a while, but she is utterly brilliant. And I hope it's going well for you, Carleen. You're such a powerful motivator and speaker whenever we hear you. So thanks for posting in the chat. Well, I don't know if we've got any more comments today. So there's a little bit of housekeeping again, just to remind you that we've got Ivier at Corporate Heroes, 5 p.m. Eastern, 10 p.m. UK tonight. Great session. So please join, support Ivier's session. She shares great ideas. She's got enormous experience of working organizationally with teams and organizing problems and contracting and negotiating. So great if you can listen to Ivier. Closing thought I'll leave you with, Clement Stone said, what the mind can conceive, the mind can achieve. And I love that. So anything you can really think of can be done on the whole. So just sit down and think about that. If you're not really clear on this goal yet and you've been hesitating, you can conceive of it, have a go, but take it through to the vein of goal. Don't give up 3 feet from the goal. You've got to be prepared before you start to throw everything at it. We all know that. We've been told that. We've experienced it. If we throw everything into it, push through to the end, you never know what's going to happen. So conceive it and believe it. Well, thank you very much for joining the session today. John Lavenia's Success Mastermind General Session, 15th of June, 2021. It's been great seeing you all. Thank you for those lovely shares, and hope to see you on Ivier's session later. Goodbye, everybody. Good to see you.
Bye.
Bye. Bye. Bye. Bye.